the Haudenosaunee, the Ojibwe, the Anishinaabe, and in particular the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations whose territory we are gathered on today. This territory is covered by the Dish with One Spoon covenant between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Confederacy of Ojibwe and allied nations. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic connection to this place. We also recognize the contributions that Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous peoples have made both in shaping and strengthening this community and our province and country as a whole. This recognition of the contributions and historic importance of Indigenous peoples must also be connected to our commitment to truth and reconciliation, and in particular to bring justice for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls across our country. In deep gratitude for all the blessings of the Great Spirit and our Mother Earth, let us all live in peace and harmony as one great tribe. Yeah.
Thank you, Sister Miracle. And now I'd like to call up Sister Miller to read the statement of respect.
Harassment or discrimination of any kind will not be tolerated at OPSEU functions. Whenever OPSEU members gather, we welcome all peoples of the world. We will not accept any unwelcoming words, actions, or behaviors against our union members. We accord respect to all persons, regardless of age, political affiliation, and racialization, including and not limited to people of African descent, Black, Caribbean, South Asian, Asian, women, men, First Nations, Métis and Inuit peoples, members of ethno-racial groups, members with disabilities, gays, lesbians, bisexual, transgender and transsexual people, and gender diverse persons, francophones, and all persons whose first language is not English. In our diversity, we will build solidarity as union members, and if you believe that you've been harassed or discriminated against, please contact an OPSEU harassment or discrimination advisor. Are there any in the room? Heron Thurarasa in that corner. Any others? Thank you very much.
And I'd like to call on Jean-Philippe to read the statement of respect in French.
Aucune forme de harcèlement ou de discrimination ne sera tolérée aux activités du CEFPO. Au CEFPO, chaque fois que nous nous rassemblons, nous souhaitons la bienvenue à tous les peuples du monde. Nous n'acceptons aucun geste, parole ou comportement indésirable dirigé contre les membres de notre syndicat. Nous témoignons du respect à toutes les personnes, quel que soit leur âge, leur appartenance politique, leur caractère racial, y compris, mais sans s'y limiter aux peuples d'origine africaine, noire, des Caraïbes, sud-asiatiques et asiatiques, aux femmes, aux hommes, aux peuples des Premières Nations, Métis et Inuits, aux membres des groupes ethno-raciaux, aux personnes handicapées, aux personnes gays, lesbiennes, bisexuelles, transgenres, transsexuelles et de genres divers, aux francophones et à toutes les personnes dont la langue maternelle n'est ni l'anglais ni le français. Dans notre diversité, nous renforçons notre solidarité à titre de membres du syndicat. Si vous estimez avoir été victime de harcèlement ou de discrimination, communiquez avec Aaron pour obtenir de l'aide immédiate. Parfait.
Thank you. First off, I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. I know the Raptors are playing in an hour and a half, roughly, and we want you to watch them. If you want to go to Jurassic Park, that's your business. I'd also like to thank everybody that's online that has joined us from hopefully all over the province. And I'd finally like to thank the candidates, Smokey Thomas and Sara Labelle, for joining us tonight. It should be a fun night, hopefully not as stressful as the questions that will be at convention, but you know, we'll throw some softballs in there. Sisters and brothers, every 2 years we have a choice to make. That choice is who will lead us over the next 2 years as president of OPSEU. With the government attacks on public services through cuts to public health and education, privatization threats to the LCBO, and cuts to funding for community agencies, there is no doubt we are under attack. The threat to labor and to us is real. Make no mistake, this government is coming for you, this government is coming for me. This fight, yes, I use the F word. There's no need to be afraid to use that word. and there's no need to be afraid to do it. Long gone are the days that if you ducked under your desk or didn't put up a fuss, the government would look the other way. This government doesn't care. With their scattershot approach to governing, it doesn't matter if you put up a fuss or not. How will we as a union respond? Will the president we elect be up to the task of leading us into this battle? What is their plan to build solidarity within our divisions, our sectors, and all other unions and the labor movement? While we are gathered here this evening to hear words, words won't be enough. What action should we expect? What supports will we see to fight back this government's agenda? Unfortunately, I cannot give you those answers. What we need and how we should get what we need, only you can answer those questions for yourself. Next week, we will choose a new president and choose a path for this union, for workers, for you to go down. That's why we believe this forum is so important. And that is why we tried to reach out to as many people across the province to join us this evening. GTAC has participated in and hosted forums just like this one almost since its inception. The purpose of this forum is to get to know more about the candidates running for the president position. Will the candidates answer all the questions we may have? Probably not. We don't have enough time. However, this is an opportunity to see what life might be like with them as president. The rules of the forum are fairly simple. Each candidate will be given 5 minutes to give an opening statement. And at the end, there will be a 3-minute wrap-up. Between those two times, there will be a question period. All of this, fingers crossed, I'm sticking to my time agenda, will end at approximately 7:25, and then closing statements will be made. After the opening statement, we will move on to the question period. GTAC as host will pose the first question to the candidates. After that, we will draw from your questions that we hope you've put into the box that is
Right there.
somewhere around here, over in the corner. Questions that attack a candidate, make accusations towards one of the candidates, and the job they may or may not be doing will not be tolerated, and I will not read them. I will make that decision. Any questions that are in conflict or may be in conflict with OPSEU's harassment and discrimination policy, I will not read, and we will pull another question. Questions that involve knowledge that only one candidate may have privy to also will not be asked. So that's why I say it's kind of a softball. Both candidates will know about their perspective in a general way, not a specific way. If the question pulled can be made neutral towards a candidate when I read it, I will attempt to rephrase it to keep the original intent and ask it. Candidates will have 2 minutes to respond to the question. This will be timed by, do I have a timer? I have a timer up back. If I could get you to come up front so that.
No.
So at 30 seconds, if you raise your hand,
Okay.
and then at 0, if you drop your hand, we should be finished.
Okay.
We will be using a round robin format to determine the order of responses. And it says we have drawn to see who will speak first, and I need to really look at my notes before I do this, because I have a bunch of numbers here. And I'm going to get you to pick a number, and the highest number will go first. So,
Oh, I got 2. Sorry.
4, 6.
Region
So
4.
Smokey. Anybody from Region 6 out there, we've got your number. Please come and get it before the end of the night. So Smokey will start. At the end, though, Smokey will finish. That way we give a chance to respond. Now that we've gone over the rules, let's get started. And I will open up the floor to Smokey Thomas.
Can everybody hear me? Yeah, all right. So, well, first off, I want to thank GTAC for organizing this evening. Thanks very much, Rod. I appreciate it. And I'd like to thank everybody here for coming out. And I'd like to thank everybody online for getting online. And it's pretty cool technology. And hopefully there's no Doug Ford people on that. At the rest, we don't like your boss much. But anyway, so we do have a decision. You have a decision. I know how I'm voting next week, but you have a decision to make next week. So for the next 2 years, who do you want to be the president of the union? I would put forth that my track record as president has been good. When I first became president, the board was badly divided. I lost every vote, 11-10. And over time, and working with Brother Almeida, now all votes at the executive board are close to unanimous or unanimous. So really done a lot of work to bring the union together. There was a lot of infighting back then, and we were all guilty of it. And I'm happy to say that that's a piece of history that we don't want to revisit. So it is about leadership. I think that I'm very well known. I had thought of retiring. I was kicking it around in my mind and kicking it around with Val, my wife. And then when Doug Ford won, Eddie actually said to me, I'd really like you to reoffer. And I said, well, I'd have to talk at home first, and we talked a lot about it. So I went home and talked to Val, and I said, you know, Eddie and I had a conversation. So she said, so you're running? And I said, well, how did you figure that out so fast? And she said, look, you need to run. We're willing to put our life plans on hold for 2 years. You run, win, and take these folks on, because I know how to do it. I do get lots of press. I do have lots of reporters call me. I spend a lot of time talking to reporters. Doesn't always result in a story, but it results in creating those relationships. You know, I would say that my management style with the staff has been fair, firm, and friendly, and I think it's worked quite well. We've had our bumps and lumps with the staff unions, but we've been able to work things out. At the when you look back over 12 years, I was treasurer for 6 years before I became the president. And when I became the president, it was quite startling to me the amount of which I didn't know about what it really takes to run the union. We are a $104 million a year not-for-profit corporation, and it is a huge task to run the union. I've been very fortunate to have 2 good treasurers. I would submit that Brother Almeida is likely the best treasurer we've ever had. And I did the job for 6 years, but Eddie brought some skill sets into the job around the buildings, construction, renovation, a whole host of things, skills that I didn't have, and plus a willingness to learn and a willingness to work together. So I would just say that the choices I think you have to make is in my mind fairly clear. I hope you vote for me, but I'd like to dispel a couple of rumors first. So one is I don't have Parkinson's. I had somebody phone me today and say, I hear you have Parkinson's. I don't have Parkinson's, right? Just so you know. I have a very close friend that has Parkinson's. Maybe that's the confusion. I don't know. The other is I really don't believe I'm too old to do the job. I think I've got lots of energy, lots of fight in me, and I like to fight smart and win. There's you know, talk about we need a campaign. Well, the board passed a campaign, and that campaign is going to convention, and it was passed by the executive board unanimously. It is a good campaign. We brought the leadership of the union in last fall. All the leaders of the union come in. I couldn't be there. My wife was very, very critically ill. Eddie rose to the occasion, did a marvelous job, and I was out of the loop for a couple of weeks. Val's healthy, wealthy, healthy and wise, and doing very well, and made a full recovery. So I was truly blessed to have Eddie and the team of staff at head office to take over. So I think I have the experience, the drive, the energy, and I know how to fight these guys. Thank you.
GTAC for hosting this. I want to thank you for, you know, allowing us to participate in the democratic process. It's very much appreciated. For those of you who don't know me, I've met a lot of you over the years, but I haven't spent as much time as Smokey has, you know, and thank you, Smokey. But I have been on the board for 8 years. I first got elected in 2011, back when Smokey's talking about where there was an 11-10 split. And I've had 8 years of experience at the board. I've had, you know, 5 years experience as a regional vice president. I come with experience from the membership. I was a local president for years, up until 2013. I have been on 3 rounds of central bargaining for the hospital professionals division. So every decision that I make and everything that I do has always been with the membership in mind, knowing what experiences I had. I lived in Brazil when I was growing up for 10 years. I, you know, spent the majority of my formative years there. I, you know, brought those experiences that I had living in another country to everything that I've done in activism. I started out as an activist fighting for animal rights, and then as I got a little bit older in Brazil, I was fighting for women's rights, because in a country like Brazil, what I realized when I first moved there, and as I got a little bit older, I realized that women had no rights in Brazil. They were considered property of their partner, and that's how they were treated. So that, you know, is even in recent history in, you know, in the late 80s and the 90s. So I've always advocated and fought for social justice. So the taking on the role within OPSEU was really a natural fit. And I love my union. I love the work that we do in OPSEU. I want to thank my region, because they are the reason why I have been able to serve as a board member and a regional vice president. It's because of the members in Region 3 and the members at convention. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to spend the past few years as the highest ranking woman at the National Executive Board and at the Ontario Federation of Labour. It really has been an incredible experience to spend time with leaders from other unions to hear about how things are impacting them and how they're dealing with those issues. And I think that those are important for us to, when we bring together those in the experiences from other unions and how they are fighting back against right-wing governments. I think those are important for us to take into consideration in how we do a fight back. And we do have a campaign currently, which, you know, was passed at the board and everything. But I do think that there is a lot of stuff that we can do that is, you know, will bring us forward into the future of OPSEU. This is not about fighting Doug Ford for 1 term, 2 more terms, 4 years. This is actually about the future of the labor movement and the future of OPSEU. And it's something that we all have to take into consideration. We do have a divide within the labor movement from new workers coming in who have no experience and know nothing about unions, who come in and are handed everything that we have fought over the years to achieve. And we need to figure out how to make unions relevant to the new generation of people coming in. And they are already doing a lot of action and a lot of fights as activists on climate change, on things that matter to them. And we need to bring them into actually the labor movement and fighting those fights with their union and using the resources that we have. And there is a way that we can do that, and we need to encourage that. Leadership is about supporting and encouraging and inspiring the next generation of leaders. It's about empowering them. And that is what I have always strived to do as a leader when I was an activist and a local president, and then when first elected at the board. And it really is the most rewarding thing to be able to see people step up and become more active and take on more important roles in their union. And that's what it is all about. And that's what I would like to have a discussion about in this union, is about the future of this union and how we empower our members and how we actually bring more people into joining us in the fight.
Thank you. It looks like we may have busted the internet. I'm not entirely sure. But I see other people streaming. So we're hoping that is not busted. But on that note, I joined the board in 2011. Obviously, look where I am, look where these two are, and that's all I'm saying about that. So the first question, as I said, will be GTAC's question. They will have 2 minutes to respond. Sara will go first, and then Smokey afterwards. So the question that we had, and just for everybody to know the process, the executive met, we voted, and I'm not sure if I voted in favor of this one, but this is the one that we're going with. Over the past number of years, there's been a lot of conflict and division under the House of Labour. What strategies would you use in your capacity as president to rebuild Labour solidarity across Ontario, within our divisions, within our sectors, in order to defeat and dismantle the Ford PC agenda? Sara.
Thank you. That's a great question. I think it's important. We have always had divisions in the House of Labour, and I don't think we should be naive enough to think that they're ever going to disappear. There will always be differences of opinion, differences of strategy, differences of, different union support, different parties and how they do things. But the key piece for us right now in Ontario is we're really at a critical juncture where one person is not going to defeat Doug Ford. One union is not going to defeat Doug Ford. It's going to take all of us working together. And I have had the opportunity over the past 2.5 years, since I was the highest ranking woman when Deb stepped down. So I've had 2.5 years of actually spending the time at the Ontario Federation of Labour and at the National Executive Board, and built relationships with every single union and with every labour leader. And that's what we have to do. We have to have conversations and put aside personal differences. It doesn't matter what happened 20 years ago, what happened 15 years ago, 10 years ago. Even that stuff does not matter when it comes about pushing forward the interests of working people in the province of Ontario. And we have to do it together. And we know that the teachers are going to be in a fight of their lives, and education workers in the fall, because they're going to be going into bargaining and probably under wage restraint. And we need to be prepared to work together as the labor movement. And it's not just going to be education, it's going to be all of us. We cannot stand alone against Doug Ford, because we won't win.
So over the years, I have had a leadership role in the House of Labour. The OFL, when we left, the executive board made the decision to first cut back his dues, then leave. We left after Rona did. I was part of trying to hold the labor movement together, and I was part of bringing it back together. I met with laborers back then, convinced them to try coming back. I worked on getting some other unions in, and fast forward a few years, Unifor left the House of Labour. However, Sara's right. This is a time for everybody to work together. When GM was in trouble, Jerry phoned and said, I could use your support. I had a choice to make between union politics or workers' jobs and rights. I'll choose the workers every time. And I did take some heat for that. I've taken some heat over the years for disagreeing with things that go on in the labor movement. I've taken heat for not being a fan of the union directly affiliating with the NDP. My position's always been, I got elected to represent OPSEU members, not a political party. There's people, and I talk to all political parties. I got some grief over the years for doing that. But fast forward to tomorrow, I'm hosting, as I have in the past, a meeting of labor leaders at head office, which Sara's going to attend with me. And we're talking about what to do about the consultations, what to do about the threats to collective bargaining. I've worked with the student unions. And tomorrow we have a very broad base of labor leaders coming in, and it should be a productive meeting. Thank you.
I want to ask more questions, but I don't get the choice. Where is my box? All right. You know, it's about time to put some of these board members to work. Miles, pick them. 2 years I've wanted to say that.
Okay, conflict of interest, that's my question.
That's hilarious.
So you should have handed it to me.
Oh, is that the deal? So you're reading, I'm
Yeah.
just, God.
Okay. This is, and if I mispronounce your name, you can yell at me and nominate me for the young ones. If I mispronounce your name, please stand up and correct me. I am going to try my best to read what is written, and if I get it wrong, correct me. So Smokey will be the first to answer this question. The president's position is a proletariat? Political, thank you. That's an R. Position to which he is expected to make voice to the OPSEU members. What is OPSEU's position on the war in Yemen?
Can you
We
repeat?
don't have a position on the war in Yemen. That's OPSEU's position. How things like this get discussed, if it's provincial, it's OPSEU's purview. If it's international or national, it usually goes up to the NUPSI executive board. But we don't have a position on it, and I'm not conversed enough in the conflict to offer a position or an opinion tonight on who would be right, who would be wrong.
Sara?
Well, there's not going to be much of a difference of opinion on this one. That is, anything that is on the broader worldwide stage is really something that comes through our national executive board. If there's any resolutions or motions that want to come forward through that, that would be the venue. Within OPSEU, we deal more with the politics within Ontario and take positions on what our members direct us to do at convention that we would take a position on within OPSEU. And that's just how OPSEU has functioned, and we deal with those things at our convention and have those discussions there.
Excellent. Thank you. Anna. We get the new board members working too. Starting now. Hear from me a lot in 2 years.
We'll see if I'm surviving. Okay.
Miles must have wrote this. No, Debbie McGinnis. Let's go.
Ooh, I got my
51.
question in. Yes. If you can read it.
Okay. I'm going to try and paraphrase. Considering the challenges we have in Region 5 with our size in membership being 30% roughly of OPSEU's total membership, we took a way long time at our regional meetings, and we take a whole bunch of resources to actually get the things motoring along here in Region 5. Members also worry about with time commitments, about their children and other commitments, and needing to you're not able to do the things that you want to do. What will you do to support Region 5 with this challenge? Does that make about as much sense?
That was an example. I was trying to give an example.
Yeah, I
of the
know, and I was
challenge.
trying to put it into your question. So it's, how will you support Region 5 with the challenges that we face because of larger membership and the amount of time that things take within the region?
Yeah.
Is that fair?
That's
Assessment?
fair. That's fair. When the example was regional. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what happened.
Smokey? Yeah?
Sara was first.
Oh, sorry, Sara.
It's my turn to go first. We know that there are different nuances and challenges with every single region. Region 5 has the amount of members, and you're in a smaller geographical area. In our regions outside of Region 5, we have other challenges that we have to deal with. It's distance, it's, with up north, it's geography, that you're having to travel from large distances and communities. And OPSEU structure has been under the Constitution how we support our members through elected leadership. And with staffing resources, the way OPSEU has been set up is that whether you're a small local with 20 people or whether you're a large local with 1,900, whether you're a local in Region 3 or a local in Region 5, that you should be getting the same access to supports from the Central Union. And that's how it should function. I know that you had a challenge with your regional meeting with the length of time it took. I'm not sure what the solution is to that because I don't know what happened and why it took so long other than a lot of people ran for positions. I think we spent a long time in Region 3 as well, not as long as you did, and you ended up having to schedule another meeting at convention. We need to figure out how to deal with these issues together as a union and how we better support all of our regions and all of our members.
Thank you, Sarah. Smokey.
So I was around when it took Region 5 about 3 conventions to get 2 extra microphones. So getting stuff through conventions is not easy. I've been around for the discussions about breaking Region 5 up and reconfiguring the regions. I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to that, but the real debate would be, what would it look like? How would it look? Would you carve up Region 2, Region 3? You know what I mean? Like, so what I would suggest to your new board members is that you canvass your local presidents and say, what is it you need? And anytime I've been asked to resource Region 5 for anything, I've always said yes or found a way to say yes, and Eddie's usually always actually found a way to finance it and resource it. So you do have a particular, because you have a lot of commuters, people commute home, right? Or, commute in to go to work. So to have a meeting at 7 at night, are people going to hang around or go to work? So I know there's some logistical challenges. Sarah's right about different challenges in different regions with differences of, travel, the snow belt, up in the north part of Region 2 and parts of Region 6 and 7. So I would just say that if there was a plan to come out of Region 5 on any issue that you needed support for, take a very good close look at it. Sometimes I've actually sat with the board members and said, well, why don't we just frame it this way and go to the board if necessary and say, here's what we want to do and have that debate. But I would say to the new board members, and Kingsley's back, maybe have a president's meeting, talk to your locals, see what they need. Can't do a survey of the locals, what the local needs are.
Thank you. And now I will call on the dual role EVM. Kingsley, you can choose the next question.
What if I chose my question?
You won't know.
Don't tell anybody.
To Rod.
You won't know.
I give it to Rod.
This next question is from Tracy McMaster, Local 561. How long have I known you and I still can't read your handwriting? Can you tell us how you plan to restore members' faith in the collective bargaining process going forward, and what OPSEU plans to do as an organization between major contracts? And I believe Smokey, please.
Well, actually, I disagree with the premise of the question. The members do have faith in the collective bargaining process. All those extensions agreements, they were ratified by the members. And indeed, Hospital Professional Division, Sara wanted one, went and we set up with the government at table, and Sara and her team went and bargained an extension agreement. And I am of the view that about 104,000 OPSEU members now have collective agreements that go into the 2021, the end of 2021. The government's been very clear they will not reopen collective agreements that are already there. They may infringe on our rights to bargain. So we've got a lot of members who got protection. The bargaining process in OPSEU is a local function in locals and divisions and sectors. They elect their bargaining teams. They do their demand set, their surveys. They do all that. They set the agenda. They go to the table and bargain. And we respect those choices. Corrections wanted to do it their way, they went their way, they did it. They're pretty happy with the outcome. So I would say that when it comes to bargaining, OPSEU is probably one of the best unions out there. We have great staff resources, and we resource the teams, and again, it's a member's choice whether they want the contract or don't want the contract.
Thank you, Smokey. Sarah?
I heard at convention loud and clear with the vote on the extension agreements, and much as a lot of people probably appreciate the fact that we have extension agreements now moving forward in under this government with potential wage restraint, I also heard that people were frustrated and aggravated with how it happened. And I think that is a valid concern and a valid point for the members to raise on the convention floor, and the members spoke. The members said we don't want that anymore, and that is what a member-driven union is all about. I have been on 3 rounds of central bargaining, and I know how I would have felt if someone had, for my view, whether perceived or real, was interfering in the bargaining process. I know how I would have felt being a member of a central bargaining team. And I think that, we, being member-driven, we did what we did. It came to the board. We brought that forward, and there were extension agreements, and Smokey's right. My division, the chair and vice chair of the bargaining team, they were the ones that said, hey, we'd like an extension. If these are being handed out, let's have a conversation about it, because we have always been kind of in a world of not being able to strike in arbitration. We've kind of always been kind of taking whatever's left over when after ONA's gone to the table ahead. So we wanted to get ahead of that. But it was the chair and the vice chair of the bargaining team that made that decision and asked for that table. And they were elected by the members to represent the members. So I think I heard loud and clear at convention. I appreciate what the convention floor said, and I understood the concerns that were raised.
Thank you, Sarah. Julia? Okay, this is from Kingsley Quack, Local 575. Do you support and how will you get Editor's Weekend held every year? Is that the...
Didn't I write that?
You said back every year. So held every year. Sarah?
Back to.
That's a great question, Kingsley. It used to be every year, and the board made a decision a few years ago to alternate, like we do with a lot of conferences. I have heard from a lot of members that they would like to see it come back to a yearly event. It is something that is set through the board and through budget discussions. I think if that is something that the board wants to entertain, absolutely we can have that discussion and do it. I know that communication is the biggest thing for our members on how they get their information out there, and they would like to have the training on how to, develop web pages, on how to write newsletters, on how to do all the things that actually allow them to filter information to their membership. So knowing that communication is really the largest part of organizing members within a union, if we want to have that discussion, I would gladly have that discussion at the board.
Thank you. Smokey?
Yeah, the executive board did make the decision to put it back to one every second year rather. So if there's a desire to have it every year, the process is you put together the proposal, bring it to the executive board, you lobby, lots of groups know how to lobby the board, and you put forward a case to make it every year again. And if there's good arguments there, I can't imagine the board would turn it down, but you'd have to make the case and make the argument, and lobby your board members, frankly.
Thank you. Let's get the ex-GTAC president to do some work. Yeah.
This one? Okay.
You want to ask a question? Pull a question. This question is from Joel Usher, Local 381. Welcome, Joel. Where are you, Joel? Welcome. Unifor Unifor disaffiliated from the CLC to raid CLC affiliated unions. How do you feel about OPSEU forming an alliance with Unifor and turning their backs on all CLC affiliated unions and OPSEU activists who have found their home in labor councils across Ontario?
Well, so when they disaffiliated, Jerry Diaz called me and he said, would you hear my side of the story? He said, I think you're the one person that I could talk to that would hear me out. I said, sure. When do you want to get together? He said, how about tomorrow morning in Montreal? I said, well, dude, I'm in Ottawa and it's snowing. But I went because I was interested to hear his point of view as well. So a lot of his complaints about the CLC are valid, shared by me, shared by our union, shared by other affiliates to the Canadian Labour Congress. The OFL fixed up a lot of its internal stuff during the struggles, but the CLC hasn't. So he explained it all, and I said, well, you know, Gary, I agree with those things you're saying, but you can make any justification in the world you want, but raiding's raiding, bud. Like it's raiding. I will never support your raiding, but I do support the changes to the CLC, to the Constitution, how you get delegates there. There's a lot of things that are wrong with it and don't fit in today's world. And then I have I've met with him a couple of times. So he needed somebody to facilitate, Hassan Youssef needed somebody to facilitate some talks with Jerry because nobody would speak to him, and it sort of got handed to me to go and talk to him about some things. So I did. So I tried to talk him into leaving Unite Here alone. And just for the record, CUPE got one of their units too, just so you know, right? And because they wanted to leave, and CUPE had some in the hotel, so CUPE ended up with some too. It's not, and Raiden is not unique to just Unifor. So I have talked to him. I've never turned my back on the labor movement and never turned my back on any affiliate. I work with everybody, and including Jerry. But do we argue and disagree on things? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, it's about fighting for workers' rights.
Thank you.
I'll try to remember what it was about. The Unifor OPSEU Alliance. Yes, sorry. It's wrong for a union to raid another union and to solely leave the House of Labor in order to do that, I think is really a problem in the labor movement. It's fine for us to have disagreements with how things are being run at the CLC, whether there's things in the Constitution we like or do not like, but we resolve them there at the CLC. We bring changes. And Unifor could have brought the changes that they needed because they had enough delegates there that they could have brought whatever changes to the CLC, to the Constitution that they wanted to address the problems that they were identifying. And for them to just turn their backs on the House of Labor and pull out so that they can actually raid another union is wrong. The whole purpose of unions, way back in the industrial age when unions were formed, was to eliminate competition amongst workers. Well, how have we failed as a labor movement when we can't even eliminate competition amongst the labor movement? So it is problematic. And I agree we support workers, absolutely. I live in Oshawa, and the workers that are losing their jobs in Oshawa that are Unifor members is tragic. It is a blow to our community, and I stand with them. But I don't think we need to stand with the leader of a union who is going to physically raid other unions. I think that breaks solidarity in the labor movement, and we cannot be doing that in a time when we need to be united. And I would like to see them come back in, absolutely. But we need to work with those that are already in the House of Labor and strengthen those relationships and try to get Unifor to come in, not formally align ourselves with a union that is breaking the House of Labor in solidarity.
Joel, you're from Region 3?
Newly elected board member.
Really?
Yes.
You know what? I'm being so biased. That is actually too specific a question. It
Okay,
had to do
Joe,
with a certain
up.
sector. Is there a way that I could, it's from Rena, local 562. Is there a way, because it only speaks to one sector? Fair? Fair? Everybody else fair?
Well, if candidates say so, why not?
All right. Yeah, but tonight you get to be in charge. Okay,
important to
so
the sector.
Rena from local 562. What will you do better, different for the Cat A sector? So, Sarah.
Okay. I've spoken with local presidents in my region over the years and chairs of various terms on your division, and the academics have unique challenges in that you don't get the same kind of book off that we get in other sectors and divisions. You can't do a book off letter for one day. It's, you know, it is, I understand it has been extremely challenging, and there have been proposals that have come to the board to help address that. There are unique challenges in different sectors, and whether you're an academic or any other sector, there's unique challenges in communications and how they come out, and the messaging that you want to have. And I think that under a member-driven union, that those absolutely have to come through the sector. The sector has to have a say in how communications are phrased and framed. You need to have the proper supports in order to get people off work in how you need them, because they're contact hours, not based on, you know, like a day off or hours like the rest of us do. And we have to do better on that, on actually meeting the unique needs to different sectors. And I think that that is an achievable goal, but it's working with the leadership from the sectors in order to do that, because you know your sectors better than anybody, and that's how we're going to be able to better support.
Since the close of the last convention, we have had a working group with the Cat A DivEx. We have resolved, I think, every issue that they put forward. We found solutions. We heard their needs, and we've worked very hard with them, the senior management team in the union. We've gone to the executive board with the changes that are needed, and we've been successful in resourcing Cat A. You have a supervisor appointed to your division on a one-year trial basis to coordinate everything. You've got dedicated staff, so we heard the concerns, right? Well, with respecting the staff's collective agreement, we were able to actually talk to them and work it out. So I think we've come a very, very long way. The division functions very well. When it comes to time off, whatever, we have had CAT academic board members in the past. We've always been able to work with the employer to arrange that time off. We have a new CAT academic board member. We will talk to her employer and we'll arrange the time off. So whatever it takes for time off. So we have heard the concerns of the sector, and we have addressed the concerns of the sector, and I think the relationship is very, very good. I sat with them at the task force. They were making both sectors, the sport and academic, were really making amazing progress, and of course, sport government nixed it. But so we've addressed a lot of the issues, and any issue that comes, the working relationship now between the DivEx and head office is actually, I think, very, very good.
Is there anybody here, don't you dare make a motion, because I'm gonna rule you out of order. Yeah, you're out of order.
I've been asked to make a point of order.
Yeah? What is your point of order, brother?
Apparently, the live feed is not working.
Yes, we know.
There are at least 2 members on site here that are making the live feeds, that I'm aware, Krista Miracle
Yes.
and Mike McEwen.
Yes, and we will,
We need to announce that somehow.
yes, the live feed did go down about 10 minutes in, and I'm up here. It's back there, and I see the thing blinking right now, and it's driving me crazy. So I will talk to those 2 members, and I will see if I am able to download, and I can then upload to the GTAC site, Facebook site. Is there anybody here from Region 4? Region 4? Come on up. I took Region 3. I'll take Region 4.
She's our new board member, elect Dave Dorn.
Ah, geez,
Yes, yeah.
another new board member.
Yeah.
And I am just pointing out, look, former board member sitting in the middle. I don't know how that happened, but that's okay.
Rod.
I don't know, Ron.
How many board members does it take to run
I'm all about it.
a presidential debate?
Okay, oh no. You had to pull this one, didn't you? This question is from Miles Magner. Miles and I have a running gag. This question will probably be finished sometime tomorrow morning. No. Equity and inclusion are critical to our ability to engage all of our diverse membership and building a stronger union. Do you support a constitutional amendment to ensure a minimum number of equity seats on OPSEU's executive board? If yes, why? If no, why not?
So this has come up over the years. So the simple answer is I would support it if we could figure out how to do it. Because here's our dilemma. We're a not-for-profit corporation. We're not a federation. So to change the Constitution, you'd have to go to convention and change the Constitution. Federations, it's easier to add, subtract seats as you like. It's just easier. We looked at this, I don't know, probably a dozen years ago. I think Barry was still on the board the first time we looked at it. And you could never get a consensus at convention to do it. But I've tried to say to people, you know, if there is one suggestion I would have is that you go to convention with a resolution to strike get the board to strike an ad hoc committee to look at it, because there are hurdles that you'd have to get over. The biggest hurdle, though, would be the 2/3 majority required to change the Constitution at convention. So it's not as simple as one might think, but there's been some very complex things taken to convention by groups and the board in the past. And it might take 1 or 2 times to get it passed, but it's gone. But you got to go there with a roadmap forward, and so far we haven't been able to find that roadmap forward. But I would support it.
Sara.
I think it's important to have this discussion because representation matters. Who you see reflected in the top leadership positions in a union matters significantly, especially when we are growing as a union and we have more and more people that are coming into our union that are coming from workplaces that are highly racialized, and we are not actually reflecting the membership that we represent in this union. And that is just the way that we have structured ourselves, and it's just what has happened over the years, and all of those voices, and again, when it's a member-driven union, those voices matter at the table, at the highest decision-making position, the position where you are making decisions over $104 million, right? It matters that those voices are being represented at that table. And I think the way that we can move forward on it is by actually having a really serious discussion about what the structure of our board looks like. Right now, we are framed around regions, and that's how we've always done it, by regional boundaries. But is there a need now to look at, do we need not just regional boundaries, but is there another balance that we can strike? Our board, the way it's structured right now, is unique. Actually, if you look at other unions, that at the National Union Executive Board, the way they structure their unions is completely different than how we have structured our board. And they do have a difference in how they reflect leadership. They have, sector leadership, they have division, they have all kinds of different ways that they structure their leadership. So I think that we can have that conversation. I think it is time, and we have it at convention, and we figure out a way forward together on how we actually are more inclusive, including at the top position within OPSEU.
Do I have somebody from Region 6, I believe. Tara. I'm being so democratic. I'm taking every region.
Here you go.
This is
Big
Miles.
Rod.
I'm going to try and paraphrase this because it deals with a specific person, but the situation does not. This is from Christiana, Local 528. if members are laid off as a part of Doug Ford's plans, how will you help them? Sara.
Well, we're all going to be facing this potentially with the plan. We actually have a government right now that wants to deal with a $22 billion deficit on the backs of public sector workers. That is the reality that all of us are facing. It doesn't matter what sector, what division we are in. And that's why it's so critical that we actually fight together. And it's so critical that we actually move forward as a labor movement together, because we actually have to push them on fiscal policy. If we do not change them on fiscal policy, it doesn't matter if you have a great collective agreement that you can access layoff recall rights, that you can file grievances, that you can do that. If their fiscal policy is going to be, we're going to trim $22 billion out of the provincial budget, we're in trouble. And we need to figure out how we're going to fix that fiscal deficit. And the way we're going to do it, we actually have to not just support members as they get laid off. We actually have to have a plan on how we educate every single person in the province of Ontario, community by community, on what the value of public services is. That's what we need to do, because we need to make sure that we're putting the argument forward that the fiscal deficit is not something that should be balanced on the backs of the workers in the province of Ontario, and the services. It's the services that our members need in their communities. And we have to do that and educate people and do it town by town in the media. And you know, Richard Shillington and Hugh McKenzie did a really great paper a few years ago where they told everybody that the value of public services puts $40,000 extra into people's pockets. So like $20 extra a year by a cut in, you know, a carbon tax or a cap and trade is nothing compared to the $40,000 that people, and we have to educate people on that, and we have to push the government on actual fiscal policy. And that's what we did in the days of action in Mike Harris. You pushed people on fiscal policy and moved them from cutting services to actually reinvesting in public services. So it's something that can be done.
Thank you. That was close, wasn't it?
Okay, time out, I gotta stop this.
So of course we enforce the collective agreement rights of every collective agreement for every member. There will be layoffs. We're getting layoff notices now. The way to go at this government is to educate the public, which we've been doing. We did it with the We Own It campaign. We're doing it with the Ford Fight Back campaign. Is around that the province has a revenue problem, not a spending problem. And that is picking up traction. I do a lot of radio talk shows, a lot of interviews, and it's picking up traction. You put the evidence in front of people, and that is, and I think that's the way to go. Of course, we still have the campaigns. We need to fight for public services everywhere in the province. We've been very successful in preventing closures in the Liberal years, but we will face layoffs. We have a situation in my hometown where 40 or 50 people are going to get laid off, and I met with the local health integration network, met with some politicians from 2-3 different parties today about if they're going to actually do that, then they need an adjustment committee like you would have in private industry to help the workers find new jobs and recognize their transferable skills into keeping the positions they're in. The Linz has promised to take a look at all that kind of stuff, so there's things we can do that, your job might be here today, but rather than layoff, right, how about you get the job over here? And if there's a little bit, and I've had experience with this when we got divested, in having the college come in, train our clerical staff who didn't have the medical terminology certificates, we got it for them. So there are lots of things we can do, while fighting the layoffs, right? And grievances are one thing. If you've got a grievance and you're still a member in good standing. So there's lots we can do, but we will have lots to do because of this government.
So we're at 7:17 now, so we'll do the final question, and then we will do the wrap-up. So this final question, is there anybody from Region 1 here? Region 1?
Very excited.
Now you're famous now.
Almost. No. Horrible wish. James.
This is from Andrea Gordon, local 330. What do you think the biggest challenge is for education workers right now?
first, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, right now, I think the biggest challenge is survival and keeping your jobs. We have, with the education sector, we have the table where you bargain collectively, but the education presidents are coming in tomorrow and talk about how we're going to protect all jobs. There is, I think, growing pushback against Ford and his cuts, because, I mean, it's starting to become evident what cuts there are. So I think it's a combination of a really active fight back in the short term on the sector, working with the teachers. The teachers' unions are planning some actions that I want to talk to our education sector leadership about. When they formulate the plans a little more, we join in the fight. And the goal is to stop the cuts, restore the funding, and not have anybody on the front line cut. And support workers in the education sector, or like support workers everywhere, like whether the organization is keeps it going. So it really is just fight, and try and change public opinion and opinion of some of those in the Tory MPP. And I think we're making headway.
Thank you, sir.
Similar cuts to education, underfunding, short staffing, and probably the biggest challenge for our education workers currently is on top of the threats to funding and layoffs and cuts and all that is larger class sizes and violence in the workplace. We know that with larger class sizes, our members are experiencing more and more violence in their workplaces, and that is something that we are going to have to deal with. We see it across not just education sector and education workers, it's rampant within workplaces, and that is going to be a huge challenge because you're going to be dealing with less people to do the work, and you're still dealing with the same amount of students and children that need supports, and you are going to see more and more of that, and we need to be able to challenge those and support our members and making sure they're safe in their workplace and still fighting the layoffs and cuts as well. But violence is a huge issue for our members in the education sector that they will be facing with larger class sizes.
Thank you, Sara. Before we wrap up, I'd like to once again thank both Smokey and Sara. I think we've had a short but informative evening. That was what we were hoping for. We didn't want to grill you too hard and for too long. So thank you once again for joining us tonight. And we'll ask Sara to start with the closing remarks.
I want to say thank you again. This was a great forum. Everybody was really friendly. It's nice to be up here with friendly faces, and I look forward to seeing you all at convention next week. I am asking for your vote to be the next president of OPSEU, and I'm doing it in the mind of us thinking about our future. And we know that we're always going to have challenges and fights. That is never going to change. We are public sector workers, and until we change the mindset of the people that are the decision makers on fiscal policy, we are always going to have challenges. We're always going to have to fight governments. We're always going to have to push back on public services. But I think we also can do it in a way where we're actually bringing more people into this union and inspiring and encouraging and supporting the next generation of leaders to come in, and we can do that. And we can empower our members. Leadership is about walking the walk. It's about encouraging, supporting, and inspiring people. And that's what I would like to bring to the table. I have spent a lot of time in Region 3, and as the chair of the Hospital Professionals Division, everything I've done has been supporting our activists, and I love that work. I love doing what I do, and I think that I bring a lot to the table. I have a lot of experience, a wealth of knowledge, not just within OPSEU, but from the perspective of having grown up in another country and seeing the value of public services and what we go through. So I've got a lot to offer the membership, and I've got a lot to bring, and I have a lot of fresh ideas, a fresh perspective, and a fresh energy, and I'm more than happy to serve, and I would love to do that, and I hope that next week that you will consider voting for Sara Labelle and voting and bringing us into looking forward in the future of this union and what we're going to do in the future, and knowing that we're always going to have fights and struggles, and I think that the main thing is members come first. You are the strength in this union, and I know that we can do this together if we take the challenge on together. And a democratic process, we will move forward no matter the outcome next week. And there's no doubt in my mind that we will do it together and we will take on the government. But I am asking for your vote and your support next week. Thank you.
Again, Rod, thank you very much. So I would say a couple of things. One, to look to the future, we need to survive today. The next 2 years are, as my opponent has said and others have said, unprecedented attacks on unions and public sector. What I bring to the table is my record of taking on all three political parties, because I've served on the board through all three of them, and I'm a calm person most days, but I bring that experience to the table. And I do believe in mentorship. I do believe in everything we've done. We have a great union. We have done a lot of things that I don't hear any credit for. The executive board works very, very hard. Local presidents work very, very hard. I recognize that. I provide training opportunities. I go out of my way to ask board members, what are you interested in training? Go out of my way to ask local presidents, what do you need? Go out of my way to work with the sectors, even when it's really tough to work with them. When they're really mad at you, and they're mad at the world, and they're mad at everybody, I sit there and we work it through, we work it through, we work it through. So what I'm asking you for is to vote for Smokey Thomas next week, so that we can continue the fight. The union, you run 2 years at a time, one term. I've never ever looked past the term I'm in. For planning, looking forward in the union, all those sorts of things, yes. But in terms of your career, you look for today, and re-elect me. We'll have 2 years of taking this guy on, 2 years to mentor some new leaders on the executive board. We got lots of talent on the executive board. As Eddie said, he'd like 2 more years. Eddie's a real contender. He's a contender someday to run for president. If I wasn't here, Eddie'd be sitting here and he'd be running. So, and I'm here in part because Eddie wants me to be here. So, I'm not too old to do the job. I got lots of energy and I got lots of fight left in me. I got a bad knee, got hearing aids, but guess what? I can take on the best of them. And for, I said to anybody that wants to pick a fight with me, go ahead and pick a fight and see what happens. I usually come out on top. And this is one time. We will take some hits. We will take some hits. There's no doubt. The guy's got a majority government. However, to me, it's the next election is the prize. Fight them all along the way, but get ready for the NDP to win the next election. Get ready for the NDP to win the next election. So I'm asking you to put your faith in the tried and true, and what you see is what you get. Most of you know me, and I think my record speaks for itself, and I think the record of this union speaks for itself, because we are the best union out there, and I really don't like when people criticize ourselves. Thank you very much.
I get the last word. This is great. I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. It was great seeing you all. For those of you that are on, I guess, pre-recorded live streaming, or post-recorded live streaming, we apologize for our technical difficulties. We will ensure to do better next time. Sisters and brothers, next week, you have a choice to make. And you'll be making a choice between 2 candidates. The future of OPSEU's in your hands. Choose wisely. Thank you.